I've always been a night owl, and when I took up the night shift at the gas station, I thought it would be a quiet job to help me make ends meet. But one chilling night, I experienced something that still haunts my dreams. It was the graveyard shift, and the dimly lit gas station stood alone in the quiet darkness. I was behind the counter, trying to stay awake with a cup of lukewarm coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting eerie shadows in every corner. That's when I saw him, a well-dressed man in a sleek suit. He stepped out of his luxury car and approached the counter with an unsettling grin. I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. He didn't ask for gas or snacks. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of cash. It was a substantial amount, enough to pay off a small debt, he claimed. I wondered why he had chosen this lonely hour to do so. As he laid the money on the counter, I noticed something wasn't right. He seemed overly eager, his eyes fixated on me with a predatory intensity. It was a gaze that sent shivers down my spine. Then, the unthinkable happened. He unzipped his trousers, and with an audacious confidence, he exposed himself. I couldn't believe my eyes. He began to engage in obscene behavior right there in the store. Fear gripped me as I tried to make sense of this disturbing scene. I couldn't move or even speak. I was paralyzed with shock. He continued his grotesque act while grinning at me, as if he were relishing my discomfort. Finally, as if sated by his shocking display, he abruptly stopped, zipped up his pants, and picked up the money. With one last, unsettling smile, he turned and left, leaving me trembling behind the counter. It took a moment for me to find my voice, and when I did, I let out a piercing scream that echoed through the night. My trembling fingers dialed 911, and I told the police everything. They assured me they'd come to the gas station right away. The minutes that followed felt like hours as I waited for the police to arrive. I felt vulnerable, violated, and alone in that eerie, silent place. When the officers arrived, they took my statement and assured me that they would investigate the matter thoroughly. They left me with a sense of security, but my mind was scarred by that night's horrifying encounter. To this day, I can't forget the man in the suit, his disturbing grin, and the unimaginable fear that overcame me during that haunting night at the gas station. I used to work the night shift at a remote gas station, far away from the comforting glow of city lights. Most nights were uneventful, with the occasional customer passing through for gas and snacks. But one fateful night, something occurred that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. The dimly lit store was quiet. The only sounds the occasional hum of a refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of the ancient wall clock. I sat behind the counter, my eyes locked on the clock as I counted down the minutes until my shift was over. That's when he walked in, a stranger, tall and undeniably good-looking. But there was something unsettling about him. His eyes gleamed with a predatory glint, and an eerie aura of unpredictability surrounded him. As he made his way toward the counter, I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. The stranger wasn't here to buy gas or snacks. Instead, he fixated on me with a predatory intensity that sent a wave of discomfort through me. His eyes bore into my skin like fiery daggers, and it didn't take long for his actions to cross a line. In a horrifying violation of personal space and consent, he attempted to touch my body without warning. Fear and anger surged within me, and I fought back with every ounce of strength and courage I could muster. But the man's strength was overwhelming, and my efforts to repel him seemed feeble in comparison. Panic gnawed at the edges of my mind as I realized I was alone in this nightmare, trapped in a gas station that had once been a sanctuary during the long, quiet nights. I screamed for help, my voice echoing through the empty aisles, my desperate cries punctuating the eerie silence. I clung to the hope that someone passing by might hear my plea and intervene, but fate had other plans. In that chilling moment, there was no one to answer my cries for help. As I grappled with this unhinged stranger, the minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The gas station, once a beacon of familiarity, had transformed into a nightmarish battleground. I struggled to find an escape route, my mind racing in search of a solution. My fingers frantically searched for the panic button under the counter, hoping that an alarm would at least scare the man away. But my trembling hands fumbled with the buttons, and I couldn't seem to hit it in my frantic state. Panic gnawed at my throat as I realized I was trapped in this terrifying ordeal. The eerie hum of the refrigerators serving as a haunting backdrop. The man's assault was relentless, his psychotic intentions clear and terrifying. He didn't utter a word, but his eyes spoke volumes. A twisted desire for power and control that left me feeling helpless. It was as if he reveled in my fear, drawing satisfaction from my desperation. I mustered every ounce of strength I had left, determined to fight back with everything I had. My survival instincts kicked in, and I realized that if I was going to escape this nightmare, I needed to act fast. With a sudden burst of energy, I managed to break free from his grasp, my heart pounding in my chest as I staggered away from the counter. But the stranger wasn't done. He advanced toward me once more, his predatory gaze fixed on me with a disturbing intensity. The shelves of the gas station's convenience store seemed to close in around me, casting eerie shadows that danced with the flickering overhead lights. I scanned the room for anything that could serve as a weapon, my eyes falling on a metal broom leaned against the wall. With trembling hands, I snatched it up and held it in front of me, ready to defend myself. The situation had escalated into a life or death struggle, and there was no turning back. The gas station, once my place of work, was now a battleground where my very survival was at stake. The seconds dragged on, each heartbeat echoing in my ears like a war drum. In a final desperate act, I swung the broom toward the menacing stranger. He dodged it with surprising agility, but the sudden movement bought me enough time to make a dash for the door. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed through the exit and found myself outside, the cool night air washing over me like a soothing balm. I stumbled to a nearby tree and leaned against it, gasping for breath. My heart raced, and my mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. I watched the gas station's entrance, half expecting the stranger to burst through the door and continue his relentless pursuit. But to my relief, he never emerged. It was as if the dark, desolate gas station had swallowed him whole, and the night had swallowed his sinister presence. As I stood there, trembling and gasping, the first faint light of dawn began to break on the horizon. The world slowly awakened around me, and I realized that I had survived a nightmarish ordeal. never forget the horror of that night. The sinister stranger who had invaded my sanctuary, and the battle for survival that had played out in the quiet gas station. It was a story that needed to be shared, a warning to others about the darkness that could lurk in even the most ordinary places. The scars, both seen and unseen, would remain with me for the rest of my days. The gas station, once a symbol of solitude during the long nights, was forever transformed into a place of haunting memories and unspeakable fear. This was a story I felt compelled to share with the world, a chilling encounter that would serve as a reminder of the darkness that could exist just beyond the comforting glow of city lights. I used to work the night shift alone at a quiet, deserted gas station on the outskirts of town. Most nights, it was a mundane and peaceful job. But one night, something happened that still sends shivers down my spine. It was around 2 a.m., and I was standing behind the counter, gazing out into the empty parking lot. The only source of light was the pale glow of the gas station's fluorescent lights, casting eerie shadows all around. The solitude was deafening, only broken by the distant hum of an approaching car. As the car pulled into the station, I breathed a sigh of relief, expecting a regular customer looking for some late-night snacks or a fill-up. However, my unease returned when I noticed the vehicle was an old, beat-up van, covered in dirt and rust. The driver's side window was rolled down, and I could see a silhouette in the darkness inside. A tall, hulking figure emerged from the van, shrouded in a tattered black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. My heart began to race as the stranger slowly approached the entrance. He didn't say a word, and his eyes were hidden beneath the hat's shadow. Trying to maintain some semblance of composure, I greeted him with a shaky voice, asking if he needed anything. He remained silent, fixating his dark, impenetrable gaze on me. It felt as if I was being watched by a predator. I nervously rang up a pack of cigarettes he placed on the counter, praying he would complete the purchase and leave. But the stranger had other plans. He leaned in closer, and the stench of something foul and rotten clung to him. My heart pounded as he reached into his pocket and produced a grimy, blood-stained envelope. He shoved it towards me, and I could see it was filled with Polaroid photographs. The images were grotesque and horrifying, depicting gruesome scenes of violence and suffering. With a growing sense of dread, I realized these were not just random pictures, but seemed to be documenting his own twisted actions. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. I was standing face to face with a psychopath, and he wanted to share his horrifying story with me. As the minutes passed, the stranger's unsettling silence seemed to stretch into an eternity. I knew I had to do something to survive this night. Desperation took over, and I made a rash decision. I grabbed a cup of hot coffee from the warmer, splashing it onto the Polaroid pictures, causing them to distort and melt. The stranger's calm demeanor evaporated as he watched the images disintegrate. Enraged, he lunged across the counter towards me, and I fought with all my strength, knocking over displays and shelves in the process. The chaos continued for what felt like an eternity, until the distant sound of sirens grew louder. The approaching police lights shone through the gas station's windows, and the stranger fled into the night. The officers arrived and took my statement, assuring me they would do everything they could to track down the menacing stranger. I never found out who that man was, or what drove him to come to that desolate gas station that night, but I knew I had encountered true evil. To this day, I still can't shake the feeling that he might return, and the night shift at the gas station remains a terrifying memory etched into my mind.